Hello, Freedom Guy 55 here again, and yes, I'm going to do this again. There are 11 more horror films, or at least I should say Halloween films, not horror, but Halloween films, that I thought that pretty much is worth talking about and, seeing. These are not like my favorite horror movies, but these are kind of horror movies that I think are fun and fun to watch with other people. And I did another video based on this, and I'm doing another one, so that's like about a total of 22. I mean, hey, 22 videos, and yet I haven't really scratched the surface on my horror movie collection. Imagine that. Well, anyway, let's get started, shall we? First one on the list is Wrong Turn. Yep, how could I not talk about a horror movie with Elijah Dushku in it? I mean, seriously, how can I not? I mean, every nerd knows Elijah Dushku, so she needs no introduction. But there are other people in this movie, such as like Desmond Harrington. You might know him playing Quinn in Dexter, as well as also Jeremy Sisto, who played briefly in Law and Order before I think it got canceled or whatnot. So this is about, basically, it pays homage to the 1970s type of 70s and 80s films of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Hills Have Eyes. And they kind of pay homage to these type of films and make their own type of film out of it. And they take a kind of inbred redneck type of family, like usual. And they wind up applying more of a kind of chase film to this movie because it's about these young adults who take a wrong turn and find themselves with this, find these like cannibalistic, inbred people, and realize that they've been kidnapping people and killing them and so on. And they get discovered by these guys, and then all of a sudden a chase is on, and then they run away from these guys, but they get picked off one by one in that direction. So it's kind of like combining a chase movie with a horror film. And it does it pretty well. And there are some certain particular kind of surprise moments that I was just like, whoa, that's interesting. Whoa, I didn't expect that. So if you get some time, check out this movie, because the makeup special effects are actually done by Stan Winston. Okay, so come on, check it out. It's a pretty good film for, a horror movie. All right, the next one on the list is I'm really surprised that no one's talked about this Halloween, but I'm going to talk about it, and that is Gremlins. Yep. It's kind of like a kid's horror movie, really. I mean, like kids like for 8 years old, but of course nowadays 8 years old has probably already seen every gory horror film out there. But I know I did, and that's why I'm morbid. Yeah. Anyway, this film is actually executive produced by Steven Spielberg, directed by Joe Dante. You might know him from directing Piranha, the original Piranha, as well as also written by Christopher Columbus. Yeah, the guy who actually directed the first two Harry Potter films actually wrote Gremlins. He also wrote Goonies, too, if you wanted to know that. But this film's actually pretty decent. It stars a guy named Billy, played by, if I get this right, Zach Galligan. And he winds up getting this kind of little stuffed animal, or not stuffed animal, but little animal, basically, that he doesn't even know what it is or whatnot, from his father. And his father winds up saying it's called a Mogwai. And he winds up holding it. It's like really cute and everything. And he gives him rules to take care of it. And one is, of course, do not expose him to sunlight. Sunlight will kill him. Any bright light will really kill him. Will actually hurt him. And then, of course, there's do not, get him wet at all. And, of course, the other one is do not feed him after midnight. Well, the one thing is that, you know that these rules are pretty much going to be broken. At least two of them are in this movie. And of course, Gizmo, and then they name the Mogwai Gizmo, and he winds up actually getting wet and multiplying other particular kind of spawns who are actually meaner than he is. And they wind up getting fed after midnight, and guess what happens? They turn into these big pods, and they open up, and out come these monsters that individuals call gremlins. And there we started out. Now this film is pretty, it's actually in some ways scary in certain cases, but it also has this kind of level of fun, especially at the end, near the end of the movie, where all the gremlins are in the movie theater going, "Hey," because they're watching Snow White, and they're singing "Hi ho, hi ho," it's all, and all that kind of stuff. And, so they have, like, really big fun with it. There are some funny scenes. There are some, like, really kind of scary scenes. And there are actually a really good showdown at the end of the movie with one of the last gremlins and Billy. So it's a pretty cool film if you want to actually watch it. I mean, I think it's actually pretty decent. It's a classic for any kind of thing. And it's not really that gory of a film. It's more along the lines of, like, scaring you. So I suggest check it out. It's pretty cool. Do you ever have those feelings sometimes where one of these kind of guys that you really admire and you like, and then all of a sudden he winds up going downhill with making other particular films or movies or anything else? Yeah, I kind of had a feeling about this guy, and it always kind of makes me want to go back to looking at this individual again, to one of his better films, or one of his like best film, I should say, which of course is Rob Zombie and The Devil's Rejects. Yep, The Devil's Rejects was actually surprisingly good and entertaining of a film. It's actually really sick and depraved too, but it really captured this kind of like surprising, I'd say, in a sense, acting job from the like three main characters here, especially the character of Bill Moseley. Bill Moseley does a really good job and captures this kind of creepy performance that when I was like seeing one of the particular kind of films, or when I saw the film and one of the scenes where he winds up actually going off on his tangent and his rant and such like that. It was really extremely creepy that I was like thinking to myself, this guy played Chop Top in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and yet he's, gives this actual pretty interesting and cool performance, and it's like really weird. I mean, the original movie, which was The House of a Thousand Corpses, which was the previous film to this is actually a better sequel. But, had him, like, go really extremely over the top, and a lot of the characters went over the top. But then, this time, these characters get kind of toned down for this film. And it basically takes the place of these three characters. We go on their particular kind of pilgrimage and follow them. And the odd thing about it, by the end of the movie, you're kind of almost finding somewhat of a kinship with them. Which is very creepy, because you're not supposed to. Because they're evil. But anyway, if you ever get a chance to actually see, Rob Zombie at his best, this is one of his films that you should actually see. This is his best film. Don't ever see those two crappy Halloween movies. I mean, seriously, just don't. Watch this film. This one's good. I recommend it. You ever find yourself in a movie theater and you wind up seeing a movie of a horror film that you're just like looking at it and going, oh my god, why did I ever come into this film? Holy crap, this is a terrible horror movie. What did I go into this? Well, this movie might be for you, and it's called Dead and Breakfast. Yes, this film I actually really enjoyed because it's a film that kind of almost spoofs really terrible horror movies. Horror movies that are actually really so extremely bad that you kind of in some ways have to laugh at it. Well, this one becomes so self-aware of that they wind up actually making a film pretty much for those films. And it's about these teenagers, or these young adults, that wind up going outside, finding a bed and breakfast. And for some odd reason, one person winds up knocking over an ancient box that is owned by some sort of guy. And all of a sudden, an evil spirit winds up coming into him. And this evil spirit has a desire for carnage in some ways. And this evil spirit has a way to take this, box and have it possess other people in such ways so that they'll desire carnage. And all of a sudden, all of this particular kind of evil, huge, massive, splatter, horror, gore just happens all of a sudden in this movie, and it's just absolutely so funny and really freaking cool and campy and schlockish, and it's just really so, it's just cool. I liked it. I just really love the movie. And what's so really interesting is that this might turn off some people in the movie, but in the film, they actually the movie winds up actually having a tendency to pay homage to Thriller by making a song in the middle of the film, and all the guys wind up dancing and such like that. And at this time, I think that this is about a point where many people would wind up actually going, yeah, I'm kind of turned off by this film. But that's the whole point of the movie. It's the fact that basically it's supposed to be really so over the top and weird and ridiculous that you're supposed to have a tendency to laugh at it. And in some ways I did. I enjoyed this movie. So if you ever get a chance, watch this film. It's a good enjoyment. Now, I haven't heard anybody talk about this film, which is really surprising because it's actually a horror movie classic. I mean, shit, it got referenced in Wayne's World. Yeah, remember that scene where he's like, dude, do you remember that? Do you remember in the movie Scanners where that dude's head blew up? Yeah, you remember that, don't you? Well, if you've seen this movie, you remember this. And really, all it ever was just a whole bunch of stuff being stuffed in, a whole bunch of, I think, animal, meats and products and such being stuffed into a bag, as well as also the blood. And just, they took a shotgun to it. That's all it ever was. They just mounted it on a dummy and boom! Took the shotgun to it. It was it's really interesting, and it's actually a really kind of fun sequence to look at. You're just like, whoa, dude! I mean, it's really cool. And that's probably the coolest sequence of this film. As well as also the ending. The ending is really decent, too. I mean, it's really cool. You got to see this movie. I mean, seriously, you got to see this movie. I mean, it's a kind of about this kind of like corporation or whatever that fed these children this kind of test subject pills and such. It's been a while since I've seen this, so I may be a little wrong, but I'm pretty certain that they were fed these pills, and then all of a sudden they had these really huge telekinetic powers. Well, one of them's gone completely apeshit, and he winds up actually really trying to take over people who are humans because he sees himself as superior. And another guy who's basically has really strong powers, tries to stop him. And pretty much that's the really gist of the movie. And it is pretty enjoyable. It is a really kind of cool film. It's actually directed by David Cronenberg, who you might know directed the film History of Violence with Viggo Mortensen. And I did also have to say that he's you might see him in certain movies, horror movies actually, like Jason 10. I call it Jason 10. You might call it Jason X, but I call it Jason 10. And also you might see him in the movie Nightbreed. So if you haven't seen this movie, I suggest you check it out. It actually has Michael Ironside in it too. So cool. Okay, now next on the list is Hatchet. Yeah, this is one of the recent kind of splatter, or really gory horror films that came out not too long ago. I'm not exactly sure. Let me check here. Okay, it doesn't say so. Anyway, this movie actually, I really enjoyed it because it brought me back to the kind of old horror movies that I saw with Jason, with people's heads being spun around, and just really this huge gore, practical effects, no CGI. It's just really awesome the way that it's done. And guess what? Kane Hodder comes back as an evil villain. He winds up playing the villain of this movie called Victor Crowley. These guys, I think it's like in New Orleans or whatever, they wind up traipsing upon the particular kind of grounds of a kind of really sadistic killer that's supposed to be actually dead, but yet he's in some ways alive. And they wind up really kind of coming across him, and he just winds up killing them all. I mean, that's pretty much how it works. And it's just, I mean, please remember, get the unrated version because that's where the goods are. This is a really big, huge, gory film. It's and it just really comes back. I mean, Kane Hodder, if you didn't know, he was the guy that played Jason 4 times, mostly than anybody else has ever played Jason. And I just really enjoy him like coming back as this particular kind of character. They also made a sequel to this, and I suggest even checking that one out too. So check it out, Hatchet. And in the past, Herschel Gordon Lewis was a director that directed like these really kind of extremely schlock films. Okay, and they were basically films that had got a lot of, let's just say they were really controversial for being very gory at their time. Okay, it was like in the 70s or so. And one of them was called 2000 Maniacs. And, well, people somewhere along the line, Eli Roth and, Scott Spiegel, or whatever. Yeah, Spiegel. Decided, in somewhat of a way, to remake that film and call it 2001 Maniacs. And yes, that is Robert Englund right there. Yes, this film is really over the top and really funny. And it's a thing that many individuals like to call splatstick, which is basically just this humorous, violent movie. And it basically is about these certain particular kind of young adults who wind up going into, or like going off the beaten path, getting detoured mainly, and finding this kind of place called Pleasant Valley, where this these kind of like southern, like over the top, how should I say, extremely stereotypical southern people winding up having a festival, and they want them to be involved. Apparently, they wind up having to be, of course, the usual redneck, cannibalistic type of people who just want to actually toy with them so that they can kill them off. But they do it in so many different, funny and gruesome ways. And it's pretty fun. Now remember, get this one, and don't get the one that's the sequel to this. That wasn't really nearly as good. This one's actually much better. It works. It's got much better special effects within it. So anyway, check it out. Have a good time with it. You ever have those moments where you hire a nanny and you want them to take care of the baby, and they're just this kind of perfect person, and then you wind up realizing that they're this kind of like possessed, that's been this kind of nanny that's been possessed by an evil tree that wants to actually take children and kill them? Yeah, I mean, you have those kind of moments, right? Well, maybe not. But apparently this family did in this movie. It's called The Guardian. And really, that's kind of the plot. It's about this couple that wants to want to actually take in a nanny to take care of their son. they wind up doing so, but the funny thing is, the nanny winds up to be this kind of, as I just explained. Well, the interesting thing is that this movie is actually not bad, a not bad horror film. I mean, this is not like an over-the-top or any kind of film like that. There are some certain sequences that are, but that's usually typical for every horror movie. But what's so interesting about it is that it's actually directed by William Friedkin. You might know him from directing The Exorcist. Yeah, so he winds up actually directing another horror film called The Guardian. And it's actually pretty decent. I enjoyed the kind of like really, I'd say camera operation within this film, and the kind of suspense near the end. That was actually pretty decent. And actually, this horror movie is kind of very rare because we don't usually see horror movie monsters that are female most of the time. Most of them always happen to have a tendency to be male, and this kind of broke that mold for that time. So, if you want to actually see something, I suggest seeing this. This is actually one of the better horror films. It's not the over-the-top type of horror film that I've just mentioned. Alright, still with me? Good. Well, anyway, the next movie on the list, it's kind of funny. It's George A. Romero, you might know as being a person that's known for making zombie films like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, the original ones. And, of course, you know Stephen King for being the, like one of the most famous kind of horror movie writers of our day. Personally, I think it's because he can make humans so well. Anyway, the thing is that they had a co-collaboration within each other at one time. I think during the kind of 80s, I think is what it was. Yeah, 1982. Really. And they really kind of seemed to enjoy each other's company that they decided to make a movie that was actually, this movie is pre-Tales from the Crypt, the series. And they wound up actually doing an homage to the actual old 50s pop horror comic book, which was Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, and Haunt of Fear. And this movie's called Creepshow. And it's actually a horror movie anthology. What it is that it takes different particular kind of stories that are like from a fictionalized comic book, a horror comic book. And they take these stories and they wind up actually playing them in this movie. And each of the stories are, different, and they're, and it's kind of funny because you might actually think that this film's going to only show 3 of them, like usually in a horror anthology you only show about like 3, different stories. But actually this movie shows 5 stories. This is actually quite longer. They went all out with this movie. And I would have to say that this movie is pretty much in some ways a very good artistic type of film, and probably a non-zombie. Well, it does have a zombie in it, but it's only one. But one in one of the stories, but that's it. But this is like one of the best non-zombie movies that George A. Romero had wound up doing. And I actually enjoyed it. It's a good time, and it really kind of shows of how much kind of George A. Romero becomes this kind of really good artist, and really kind of paying attention to the kind of, horror pop culture comic book that it comes from. So I really enjoyed it, and I think that you will enjoy it too. It's pretty cool. Alright, next on the list is another slasher film. Mainly it's about an actual evil, crazed doctor played by Larry Drake. You might know him from playing the villain in Darkman. Well, he winds up playing a villain here, and he's this kind of really insane doctor who winds up having these kind of different contraptions that he winds up using upon people to kill them off. And he kills each of these particular kind of people in the neighborhood and around when he escapes a mental hospital. And pretty much that's the story. He finds out that one of them at least has a heart condition, but that seems to be a side note. And really, in a film like this, which is Dr. Giggles, I don't think you really actually have a tendency to care about this. What really actually is cool about this movie is the gimmicked type of things that he winds up using on people that just seems so totally cool. I mean, when we talk about horror movies where you talk about the different particular kind of kills and gimmicks of kills that you wind up seeing in others, this one takes it to the extreme limit, and it becomes extremely fun. And really, in some ways, unintentionally funny, but really kind of fun in a fun way. I enjoyed it, and I think that Larry Drake plays a kind of creepy character when he winds up actually giggling. I mean, when he giggles, it's just like, that's just creepy. So if you ever have some time, check out this like slasher film. It's actually pretty cool. All right, last on the list is a Peter Jackson movie. He actually did this, of course, before Lord of the Rings and whatnot. And it's actually executive produced by Robert Zemeckis. Interesting enough. And that is The Frighteners. It stars Michael J. Fox as this person who experiences a traumatic event in his life. And he winds up really being able to see dead people everywhere. And this movie kind of plays or traipses upon this kind of concept of horror and comedy pretty well. I actually enjoy the kind of comedic moments in certain directions, as well as also the kind of, story and how it developed. The story's development is pretty well done. And I can tell you one thing, Peter Jackson knows how to do special effects, especially CGI effects, that make it look entertaining. And I just really did enjoy this movie. So if you ever get a chance, please, see this film. It's like one of the last films before Michael J. Fox, was discovered with his condition. So, please, enjoy this. It'll be a good time. And it's not really that gory either. So I think for anybody who's not really a huge fan of gore, check this one out. It's a good one. And that's it. And I don't want to take any more of your time anyway, because that was pretty much the last of my videos. But I just wanted to do another one because, there's just so many good horror movies out there, or at least, good Halloween films out there. And I wanted to even express even more of them. So, I'm sorry, I can't take any more of your time. So, I thank you for your time, and have a nice day.